The second announcement is in regards to water. Because of the setting arrangements, we could not be able to put water per chair, and therefore they are at the sideways. So the water at the sideways are not just for those who are sitting at the sideways, they are for you. So we are requesting that those who sit there to favor us by passing them through. So they are for all of us. I'm told the sideways guys thought that they are theirs alone. The hotel also gave us an option in view that we have quite a number of guests. The first option was that we stick to the normal lunch hour, which is between 1 to 2, but there is a challenge that the queue will be very long. In addition to this hour number, they also have quite a number. You've noticed we have so many guests in this facility, and therefore they were requesting that we go for the option 2, which means that we delay our lunch with 1 hour, so that we go for lunch at 2 to 3. The beauty with that, it will be just ourselves. So we will not be having a crowd there, and we'll be enjoying our lunch. Will that be okay? The ayes have it. So that means that at least we'll now try to make good use of that extra time then, so that we can be able to finish in good time. Lastly, before I call the presenter who is going to take us through the guidelines for governance, just the CEOs have requested me to brief you that they decided as a strategy of making follow-ups on the issues that are affecting you, mostly cross-cutting issues, and also sharing information. They came up with a caucus that will be able to assist them in terms of coordination and addressing the issues. And they have come up with an interim office, which is chaired by Solomon. Solomon is the CEO of police, and they also elected some interim members, which quickly I'll brief you. There is Mr. Dede from Kenya Bankers, that's the CEO. We have Jane from Egerton Sacco, then Lydia from Tembo, then Onchiri from Harambe, then Osoro from Baraka, and their secretary is Karaoke from Sharia. The entire objective is at least they have like a framework that will assist the licensed deposit-taking Saccos to share issues that is affecting them and to be able to follow up. For instance, these resolutions that we are going to make here, how best can we as a club, so to speak, be able to follow through. So they've come up with that as their own strategy. The authority was not there. It was their Kamukunji, and that's how they decided. And what they are seeking from the chair is the support. The details they'll explain to you. Now, with that, remember that we have the CEOs up to lunch hour. Then thereafter, we'll be remaining with the chairs for the CEOs round table. So allow me to invite my colleague, Joseph Osoro, who will now take us through this very important guideline. To me, I call it is the gist. Because if you don't have good governance, then whatever you are doing in terms of managing a financial institution, you are not going anywhere. Karibu sana, Joseph.
Thank you so much, the MC, for giving me this opportunity to lead the discussion on governance. I may, and I want to stress the word may, the least person suitable to present on governance, given that when I look at the audience, I see a lot of wisdom. I see very great people of this nation who their day-to-day activities all to do with governance. But I must also emphasize that having interacted with all these people for the past 12 or so years, then who can better talk about governance than me? Secondly, I want also to borrow from the airline industry. For some of us who get opportunity to go through air transport, when everybody is boarded and the flight is about to take off, it is always said that even if you are a regular traveler, please listen to the safety measures, because that is what guarantees your security to reach the destination. So when I look at you and I see how comfortable you are seated, I want to say that even if you are a regular traveler in governance, please just listen to me so that we can reach safely to our destination. And with that introductory remarks, I want just to go straight away so that I don't waste time into the discussion. And the discussion is structured in, I'll give a brief background of the guidelines from the time we started in 2015, how those 2015 guidelines have guided us through the processes and the activities in the Saccos. Then why? Why do we need to revise? If we issued it in 2015, why do we need to revise it in 2022? And the process of the revision started in 2021. And then the third section, we will now be discussing the guiding principle. And then the last session will be plenary, where I will invite all of us. Plenary now is the real round table where now that wisdom that I see in front of me will be giving their input into this document, so that the moment we will release this document for use, even other industries will come to the Sacco subsector to borrow from us and say, these are a very organized team. So in brief, that is the presentation outline. In terms of background, in 2015 and before 2015, you all remember that prudential regulation started in 2010 and picked up in 2011. Now, during the time we were onboarding the deposit-taking Saccos, there were a number of challenges. And the number one key challenge was on governance. And therefore, we decided that we cannot just sit and see people grappling with the issues of governance without providing guidelines. So with the assistance of professional governance consultant, the guideline of 2015 was developed to standardize governance practice in deposit-taking Saccos, bridge the gap between now the regulatory demands and the common practice. Even currently, what the regulation demand and practice there may be some differences, and therefore the guideline tried to bridge that. There's also the need for developing some training material for corporate governance, because a number of you were asking us, where can I learn this? Which reference material, which reference document can I use to be able to also induct new directors coming on board and even new managers which were being recruited in Saccos? There was also need to provide clarity in terms of roles of members, directors, and managers within the confines of the law. Then another output that came out of the revised governance guideline, the 2015, there was, or there is, I don't know whether it's still active, a continuous governance capacity development program which was developed in collaboration with the cooperative universities of Kenya. Let me see by a show of hands how many of you attended that program. Up there? Yeah, I can see it's less than a third, 30% of you having attended that program. But that was a very good program which came out of the process of developing the governance guidelines 2015. If we borrow from other industries, especially in the pension industries, how many of us here are trustees? Trustees, I am one of them. Yeah, I can see a number of hands. For you to become a trustee, of a pension scheme, you must go through just a 5 days kind of induction program, and you are given a certificate to enable you effectively discharge your duties. So we were also looking into it that having developed this guideline, we also needed to have some tailor-made program whereby new directors or directors who have also been in existence can also go to develop their capacity. So the program started well, but I think we'll need to discuss on how we can enhance that. Then there was also proposed legal amendments on suitability criteria for Sacco officers. This, I think, is still stalled at the legislative arms of government, and we hope that it will be able to go through so that the tool is available for us to use. The reason why it is important is that sometimes it pains us from the regulatory perspective when we see rogue individuals moving from Sacco A to Sacco B, and because of the legal rights, we are told that you cannot stop somebody from being employed since we do not have powers. So that suitability amendments meant to bring some teeth so that we are able to monitor individuals who serve in Sacco, so that you do not bring Sacco A down, then you move to Sacco B, and you are just allowed to continue. So in terms of background, now let's see as the achievements of that guideline which was issued in 2015. Number one is that what we are seeing is that it brought a lot of sanity and discipline in the management operations of Saccos. At least now the directors and the managers had a document to refer to guide them in terms of developing and implementing the governance instruments. Then in terms of election and nomination and election of directors, there was an adoption of a nomination or kind of vetting committee, so that before a director is elected to a Sacco, there is some kind of procedure that they go through. How many Saccos here today have nomination committees for directors? I can see a number of hands, so that was one of the positive outputs of that guideline. There was also now the availability of a reference material for capacity building. Then the relationship between now the management and the board also improved, though there is still challenges here and there. But from where we stand, there's a lot of improvement. And as a result, we can also attribute the growth. You remember the figures, the statistics which were presented here by the CEO. That growth could not have been achieved without governance issues being addressed. Lastly, is on better internal control systems. But with all these positive results from that governance guidelines, which was issued in 2015, we have also experienced a number of challenges which need to be addressed. One of them is that there are inadequate policies. Policies are evolving the same way business is evolving. The way we discuss cybersecurity today is not the way we were discussing it in 2011 or 2010. So policies need to evolve, and therefore there is need to enhance the policy output. Then we also realized that there are instances where policies were developed during the licensing process, but these policies are not being utilized. They are in the shelves. So we need to ensure that the policies that are developed by the board are utilized to realize the benefit that was envisaged in developing them. Then there's lack of structured approach to board operations. Inadequate disclosures on governance and undermining now the transparency and accountability, and including now the training needs. We still need to enhance this document so that as we train as board members and as management, it speaks to the specific needs which have emerged. We have also realized over the period that there is an inefficient and ineffective oversight function. In certain instances, we realize a situation where the board is not playing their role effectively in terms of oversight, and therefore the need to revise the guideline. The last point there is very key. And I want to say it's very key because in 2011, 2012, going to 2013, there were some Saccos which would be sitting with us today here, but they are not here. What happened? Investment without following due diligence. And they were very promising Saccos. But because they decided now to divert their core business into other businesses, they are not here with us, and you are aware of those Saccos that I'm talking about. I may not mention the names. There is the issue of related party financing and inadequate assessment of financial capability of borrowers and contractual agreement, where Saccos have established subsidiaries, but there is no transparency in governance between the subsidiaries and the Saccos themselves. And yet, finance is flowing to these entities. Inadequate internal controls and risk management system. Risk management and internal controls, these are things which we need to keep on improving. Even if we revise this guideline and we agree to adopt it today, 1 or 2, 3 years, we'll still need to adjust so that we ensure that our systems are foolproof. For those who have been here for the last 2 days, remember, Central Bank told us that we should operate on a zero trust environment to ensure that we are not attacked left, right, and center. Then there's the issue of lack of succession planning and board management. We have experienced a situation where an institution does extremely well under the leadership of a particular chairman. When that chairman leaves the scene, the trouble starts there. So we are revising these guidelines to ensure that at least there is smooth transition. We are all temporal in this business. We will not be here permanently, but we must ensure that the business will still exist even without our existence. And therefore, the guidelines have been now revised to address the specific challenges which I have mentioned. And remember, I said because of the wisdom that is here, there could be even more challenges which we have not brought in here. Some of them are in the guidelines, but we want a healthy discussion so that whatever document we come up with is one that is foolproof and is acceptable to all of us. And that now takes me to the guiding principles, which is the core of this discussion. The guidelines are based on broad principles which should guide now the directors and the managers in ensuring that the entity is run in a professional manner with the member interest at the core. They take cognizance of the uniqueness in Saccos as member-based financial institutions which serve people with unique needs. The guidelines are also developed based on the philosophy of cooperation with the central core values of equality, equity, and self-help. What this means is that these guidelines are not deviating from the common business practice of Saccos being cooperatives. They also embrace the concept of human development, brotherhood, people working together for better life, not only for themselves, but also for the community. The guidelines have been organized in certain sections, and the sections are, the first one deals with the member representation and participation, being member-based financial institutions. The second addresses the issue of board structure, power and functions. How should the board delegate their powers to the CEO and the management to ensure that they achieve the set objectives? There's a section that addresses the issue of tone at the top. Yesterday we were told about tone at the top, tone in the middle, and also tone at the bottom. How should they be speaking to one another? It also addresses the issues of internal controls and risk management, board practices and processes, the relationship between the board and the management. How can Saccos plan for the future? I remember one of the challenges investing. And investing, I believe we only invest so that we can secure the future. So there is a need that when we are planning for that future, we plan it in a secure manner, that it does not bring problems to the current operations. Then there is the issue of transparency, accountability, and disclosure, which addresses now to the annual reports that we relay to our members during the AGM and in other forums. Then lastly, it addresses itself to application and enforcement. Who is it applicable? Who is supposed to ensure it is complied with? And in case now you are not complying with it, what are the sanctions or the consequences? The guideline is a very huge document we shared with you. Let me see by a show of hands those who have got an opportunity to read the revised guidelines. Quite a few. Up there, quite a few people have got an opportunity to, to read the guidelines. We shared the guidelines sometimes back, 2 weeks ago, for you just to go through so that when we come to discuss like this, we discuss from a point of knowledge. Now, I'll take now the next few minutes to just highlight the principles as contained in the guideline. And the principles are, they are from number 1 to 20. Number 1 now addresses the issue of representation and participation, where we are saying that the governance system should be quite participative. Members should be involved in governance in the Sacco. It talks to election of credible persons, introduces the issue of the nomination committee, and goes even ahead because the previous one had a nomination committee but did not spell out the terms of reference of the nomination committee and who should actually sit in that nomination committee. So that has been addressed in the revised guidelines. It talks about representation of incorporating the issue of gender, youth, and minority interest. I want to believe that DT Saccos have greatly spread from 2011. There were Saccos which were not having even a single branch. But today, they are having more. And these 20 or even more are spread across the country. That the members whom you have brought on are adequately represented in your governance system, be it the delegate system or the directorship. The guideline tries to facilitate members to fully participate in the AGM, including giving members adequate notices. One of the challenges we have experienced, especially during Corona, there are a number of Saccos that once they received the direction from the government that there is no gathering, they have not held AGM. They say the guideline by the commissioner is still effective. So we have to force them to organize. While progressive institutions embrace technology and they have never missed even a single AGM. So the guideline is aimed at ensuring that the members are involved in this, in the decision making in the Sacco. Then access to information relating to society, including financial performance. Quite a number of members also come to complain that they do not know. Apart from receiving dividends, which sometimes they do not even know the rates, they do not know how their Sacco performing. And sometimes that return cuts off once, pop, especially when we are undertaking certain enforcement actions. then the members start claiming that they have never known that their institution, how their institution has been performing. So this guideline is aimed at enhancing information sharing with your members. The principle number 2 now talks about the structure of the governance system in terms of the board. The law provides 5 to 9, of course, with an exception clause where the commissioner can give exception for more. And this size, some Saccos may not need to have 9 if you think properly and see what suits you. I'm aware of a number of Saccos that have 7 or less than 9. How many here have less than 9? Or we all have more than 9? More than 9? Only 1. Less than 9? I can see quite a number. So it addresses the issue of size, which now you must ensure that whatever number you have is working for you. Then full representation and proper accountability in terms of transparency. We are seeing a situation where the traditional common bond of a Sacco was, for instance, teachers. And then in the membership, the current membership, teachers form like 30 or less than 25%. But in terms of now the governance, this other multitude of people are not represented. So when you are having your AGM with the delegates, you are talking to teachers, while the 70% are excluded from the governance system. So we expect that to be improved. The mix of skills and competencies required in the achievement of the Saccos long-term goals need also to be considered. The issue of gender balance, geographical distribution, ethnicity, age, occupation, and experience of the directors also need to be considered when structuring the board. Then the powers and functions of the board is also addressed in the guideline to ensure that the leadership of the Saccos are capable of making sound judgment in directing the Saccos activities to achieve continuous prosperity. Bullet number 2 talks about take full responsibility for the performance of the Sacco in meeting the stated objectives and obligations. That full responsibility does not directly translate into executing executive or operational duties. That has been misinterpreted by a number of boards, that when we say full responsibility, then they want to do everything, from approving loans to ensuring loans are disbursed. But when it comes to recovery, a very big challenge. So the guideline provides clarity in terms of that full responsibility. It also requires that Saccos comply with all statutory and legal requirements, including codes of best practice and ethics of directors, management, and staff. And annually, you will be expected to undertake some evaluation. It is said that what gets measured gets done. So for you to ensure that you are effective and you are delivering, there should be a board evaluation annually. How many here have embraced the issue of board evaluation? The number is not very encouraging. So this guideline will ensure that at least 90% undertakes, or 100% undertakes board evaluation at the end of the period. Principle number 4 talks about separation of powers between now the board and the CEO, and explains the role of the chairman and that of the CEO. It provides that there should be a very clear division of roles and balance of power and authority. The chairman's responsibilities are clearly defined in the bylaws, The board is non-executive directors and shall delegate to the CEO operational issues of the Sacco. Principle number 5 talks about directors' terms of appointment. We have had situations where immediately a new director is elected by the members and they come into the office. They assume that that full responsibility that was being addressed in the upper slide, they take it, that they are now supposed to do. So the new guideline or the revised guideline requires that once a board of directors is elected, there should be some appointment letter describing the expectations, what that new director is expected to do. There should be a signed letter of appointment. And this letter of appointment should be filed by the commissioner and, of course, the director at the county, so that we are able to hold one another to account. It also spells out what should be detailed in this appointment letter and who should issue this appointment letter. I believe even at the national level, when the president is elected and the IEBC is issuing that election certificate, then there is the issue of oath. There is a proper guide on what the person who has been elected in office can be able to do and not do. Principle number 6 talks about board induction and continuous skills development. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning that project developed by the cooperative university has taken a nosedive. We need to kind of revive it to make it more responsive. And the only way we can do it is if you, who is sitting here and who is affected by this, bring up proposals on how we can make it effective. I remember there were issues to do with cost, that it was very costly, that we can address. There was the issue of exams. I think what killed it was the issue of that at the end there was some exams. We can be able to find a way of going around the exams so that you get the knowledge to apply, but you are not subjected to that school-like approach to doing things. So those are discussions which we need to come up, but we realize that there are no proper induction for directors when they are brought on board, including continuous development. Like now what we are doing, we are really upgrading our capacity to ensure that we are effective in playing our roles. Principle number 7 talks about directors' compensation. I think this is an area which also requires a lot of guidance to ensure that whatever the directors get from these entities is which they are supposed to get. And the key point there is that there need to be some approval from the general membership through the AGM in terms of what the directors are supposed to receive. And it should be in the public knowledge of what it is there that the directors get. Principle number 8 talks about board committees. It limits the number of board committees to 4, and there are very specific reasons as to why we are proposing 4, though there is a leeway that there could be an ad hoc committee, and even that ad hoc committee, the guideline has gone ahead to describe what should be the basic minimum terms of reference for ad hoc committees, so we do not see the increase in number of board committees through the ad hoc. It also emphasizes that there is need for certain aspects of our functions which have come so critical in your success in the business. Issues to do with ICT, we were seeing they are left out. The board are not discussing issues to do with ICT, and this is really affecting their performance. So the guideline provides that now one of the committees should be given responsibility to deal with the ICT matters. It also requires that when constituting these committees, you need to consider the relevant skills so that the committees discharge their duties. The last bullet there addresses the issue of audit committee, which should possess financial knowledge. We know there are Saccos which are having challenges here, but through that induction, they can be able to acquire that financial knowledge. Principle number 9 talks about values and code of conduct. And the guideline provides that every director or management should sign a copy of code of conduct and bond of confidentiality. We are seeing a situation where some of the reasons or some of the causes of conflict at the board or at the institution is a situation where the board met, they were discussing very sensitive issue, and when they depart, one of the board members decides to tweet. Or he decides to post in a WhatsApp group what they were discussing. So you find that the members will not interpret that information the same way the board members were interpreting it. So the guideline now will require that once you are elected as a board member, you should ensure that confidentiality is maintained. Whether now we have very, very excellent technologies to spread information, we need to use them wisely. It also requires or provides that there should be appropriate steps to communicate to throughout the Sacco, the organizational values, professional standards, and code of conduct. I must say that sometimes when we are interacting with the community and you ask them about what Saccos are, a number still gives very negative, but a number can pinpoint and say, Sacco X is doing a very good good work or a very good service. That cannot happen if we do not have organizational values and professional standards of codes of conduct. The board should ensure that there is that tone at the top, which should become, now there's the tone in the middle and the tone at the bottom. So the guidelines require that we become organizations with values. Principle number 10 talks about internal controls, issues to do with the supervisory committee, audit committee. These are contentious issues which I believe as we go to the plenary, you'll be able to discuss and see how do we balance and how do we ensure that the work of supervisory committee and the audit committee are effective. Principle number 11 addresses the issue of risk management, and the guideline provides that risk management should be incorporated in the work of the audit committee so that they provide oversight to senior management's activities in managing credit, market liquidity, operational, and all other risks which are inherent in Saccos. These committees, the guideline requires that they regularly engage and keep the board informed of the risk exposures and in terms of now the management activities. It provides that there should be some basic risk assessment policy and the business continuity plan should be in place to ensure that in case of an eventuality of a risk crystallizing, then there is a remedy or a recovery mechanism. Principle number 12 talks about board meetings. According to the law, the board is supposed to meet not more than 12 times. But what we are seeing is that there are some Saccos where meetings go beyond 12, but worse still, there are some Saccos where the board meets in a year, they meet like 4 or 5 times. How many have experienced such kind of a scenario? And the board members are unable to see eye to eye. And we still expect this institution to run and compete with, not only with other Saccos, but compete with other competitors like banks and microfinance institutions. So the guideline will require that you be guided by the 12 meetings at most, but at least if you are to adopt the quarterly, there should be 4. So you should not go below 4 in a year. That is provided in the guideline. The guideline also talks about the agenda of the meetings and how they are supposed to be developed or arrived at in consultation with the CEO. The guideline also requires that there is at least a board work plan, a calendar year board work plan to guide the activities of the board. How should the board conduct meetings? And these are capacity issues, which you should ensure that when you are doing the inductions, you bring some of these issues in as the topics of induction. So when you go for a meeting, you cannot have a whole day's meeting, because we have seen situations where board members, they meet with different agendas, but this different agenda is translated into different meetings, so that in a day, you indicate that you conducted 4 meetings because of different agendas. So these are practices which we should try as much as possible to eliminate through adoption of this guideline. The guideline also provides that there should be existence of a policy to guide special board meetings. Remember, you are limited in terms of the maximum number of meetings at 12. But there could be a situation which requires special board meetings. So it should not be left at the whims of the chairman to call special, or at the whims of the CEO to call special board meetings, but there should be a proper guide on what criteria or what needs would require special board meetings and how should they be conducted. The guideline provides clarity on that. Principle number 13, board management and relationship. Overall, it requires that the relationship between the board and management should be positive and provide an enabling environment which good governance and efficient management can thrive. So the relationship should be such that when you meet, you are able to contribute effectively to the agenda on the table. The agenda should be transparent, clear, and the responsibility is specifically cut out through those committees that we have said for. If you are the chair of one of the committees, especially credit, then you should be guided. And this guideline, at the end of it, also provides terms of reference of these committees, because we have realized that credit committee, in some instances, only meet to ask how much have you disbursed in terms of loans in this month. Then when they are told a very big number, they say, well and good, you are working. But they do not go in to assess now the risk involved in disbursement of those loans. It also guides in terms of having the right people with the right skills for all jobs. Transparency in terms of fair recruitment and remuneration procedures consistent with internally approved policies. We must say that this one, there has been improvement. From 2015, we have seen Saccos now advertising for positions requiring professionals to apply and serve in Saccos. And even in terms of remuneration, it has improved. So let us apply this guideline to ensure that that remuneration is consistent and is matching with the income which the Sacco is able to generate. There should be clear roles and responsibility of reporting and communication structure between the board and the management, so that you do not have a board member who has not even interacted with the CEO, but is already dealing with a credit officer, asking that credit officer why loan X has not been approved, and yet the credit manager is not aware, the CEO is not aware, because when that happens and that loan goes bad, where will the responsibility fall? With the board member, because these other people will say, I do not know. So when you ask the CEO, he says, I do not know how that loan was disbursed. When you ask the credit officer, he also says, I do not know. Then the institution suffers. So there should be very clear roles and communication structures within the Sacco. We are also saying that there should be a set formal standards for all Sacco staff so that they know the communication channels. So that when a staff member is approached by a board member, they do not say, I'm not going to supply you, but they say they have an effective way of communicating, of saying no, so that proper channel is followed. Principle number 14, and please don't get tired, I said there are 20, so when I'm at 14, I'm almost done. Talks about planning for the future, and it requires that the board and management should take a long-term view of the future of the Sacco and plan accordingly to ensure that individuals involved in running the Sacco understand the strategies developed and ensure there is successful implementation. A long-term view. When you are the chairman, I know the policies of some electoral, the election or the term of board members are 3 years. When you are elected for 3 years, you should have a long-term view that beyond these 3 years, the institution will still exist. Or when you are approaching retirement, you should develop that long-term view to ensure that even when you are out of the governance system, the institution will still be able to serve its mission, vision, and purpose. It should ensure that there are core values, which I've discussed in the other earlier on. There should at least be a strategy review meeting at least once a year, because this is where you set now the long-term goals. How many have conducted a strategic meeting just to decide where do you want to go? How many? Quite a number. So we need to improve on that to ensure that these institutions will outlive us for the future generations. Principle number 15 talks about the ICT and the issues of ICT and the risk that it entails. We have discussed a lot with the CEO, and therefore it requires that there should be a technical committee composed of management established within the Sacco. Remember what was being shared by Safaricom, that ICT in a very big institution is being run by one individual. Now, when this individual is not available and the Sacco is being hacked, the process takes several hours before now it is addressed. So the guideline requires that within the management, there should be a technical committee dealing with ICT matters so that we do not let it to an individual, because ICT is an enabler. Even if I am not an expert in ICT, but when I sit in that committee, I can be able to add some value by throwing some questions to ensure that whatever we come up with is effective and efficient as is going to serve the purpose upon which it is meant to achieve. We are seeing even instances where procurement of ICT system is just left to the ICT guy. Akisema hii ni mzuri, board wanasema ndio, bring that. When he says this one is bad, the following day it is removed without even questioning in terms of the expenditures which are being incurred in that area. So the guideline will require that at least there is some sanity in that area. The guideline also requires that at least on a regular basis, on an annual basis, you need to obtain some independent assurance on the effectiveness of ICT, of the internal controls. How effective are they? And this addresses the issue of the ICT systems audit, which was also discussed earlier. It's only that here, now we are bringing this to the board. Principle number 17, accountability to members and responsibility to stakeholders. I must say that if you are an effective board and leadership, you must be able to know who your key stakeholders are and what would be their opinion in whatever new thing or new idea that you are trying to bring on board. This saves a lot. Remember, I mentioned that there are some entities which, if they were human beings, we would have observed a moment of silence because they have gone under. It is an issue of stakeholder management. One of your key stakeholders is the regulator. Sometimes you make decisions which is within your purview, but you do not even have time to come and consult the regulator to ask, what is your opinion in this direction we are taking? Remember, up there, we have talked about you having an annual strategic meeting where you think about the long-term view. That is good, but before you refine and agree that you are going this direction, ensure that your key stakeholders are involved and you also listen to them. This will ensure that you exercise a degree of due care and due diligence in discharging your duties. It will also ensure that you update yourself with the legal and compliance requirement. For the 2 days we have been here, you have seen that there is a lot of legal requirements which we are not even aware of, but has placed a lot of responsibility on us as board, as management, that we ensure we need to comply. So if you are not engaging your stakeholders appropriately, you will not be able to know that there are some added responsibilities which you are supposed also to discharge. Number 18 talks about corporate governance reporting. The guideline now requires that as you do your annual reports, there should be a section dealing with corporate governance reporting, and it tells the basic minimum that should be there in that report. Number 19 talks about corporate social responsibility. How many of us here are doing something in corporate social responsibility? Yes, I can see there are quite a number. So the guideline now will require that as you do that, as a board, you need to have a very clear policy on what you want to do in terms of corporate social responsibility and what you expect to achieve out of it so that it is guided. It is not just a suggestion that you made or somebody with a need approached and you saw that it is good that you respond to that request or that need. So there should be a very clear policy on corporate social responsibility activities, which must be commensurate with the financial performance of the Sacco, and it should be incorporated also in your annual approved budget. How many have this policy? Now the hands are few, but when I said how many undertakes, the hands are very many. So this guideline will ensure that you have at least a policy on how to deal with corporate social responsibility activities. And then lastly, the last principle talks about regulation and the supervision of Sacco society. I must say that for those who have been able to do very well, they have embraced regulation and supervision. But there are some that still ask, what is this regulation? After 12 years in this business, some are still asking, what is this regulation? So what we are saying is that as an entity, you must embrace the issue of regulation. One very key important regulatory instruments, for instance, is approval of accounts. Sometimes when you bring your accounts to be approved, and some question mark has been put on a certain line item in those statements, people are very jittery and say, what does SASRA know, or what does SASRA have to do with this? But if you are to know or to embrace the issue of regulation and ensure that regulation is good for you and is also helping you as another eye of ensuring that the risks are well taken care of, you will not have that kind of reaction when questions are raised on your audited financial statements. So this section addresses the issue of, we will try that when we are undertaking our supervisory programs to ensure that Saccos comply with this, and it is also your responsibility to ensure that you comply with this guideline. That is the main reason why we are exposing this to you, so that you give us your comments openly and even enhance it where you find that it is still deficient, because it is meant to guide you, not us. Us, when we come, we just evaluate. Did you comply with this? You took a CSR activity. Did you have a policy? Was it within the budget? But now when you embrace this, then even that activity does not add value to you. So you must ensure that you comply with this guideline. Not that we issue the guideline. Sometimes when we visit you during on-site inspections and ask whether a director has ever seen this guideline, most likely they always say no. When did you issue it? Ulipatia nani? Ulipatia CEO ama ulipatia chairman? Then they say the chairman normally doesn't share with us some of these things. You should be coming directly. So as the board chairman of the board, and in terms of succession and other management of the institution, ensure that when you leave this place, you go back and discuss with your board and share with them some of this information. That is what is meant complying and applying the instrument. Share with your management so that they also know the good things within the guidelines. And I think that marks the end of my presentation. And now I return the mic back to the MC.
Why are you clapping? It has sunk. The issues of governance have sunk. Yeah? But they are yet to sink because there are some clarifications you need. Yeah? Okay. So we'll give you an opportunity so that we can be able to interrogate these guidelines. You'll be able to ask questions, seek clarifications, and I'm also seeking the permission from the chair to allow the CEOs also to ask questions as far as the governance is concerned. The whole idea is that we need to be ahead as far as management of our financial institutions are concerned. I know if I use the financial institution, you are not happy because you always say Saccos are unique. So we should not lump them together with others. But in as much as you are unique, then the governance cuts across. These good institutions that you are seeing them declaring a lot of profit, a lot of dividend, this is the trick. And this is the strategy that they've been following. Before I open the floor for questions, comments, and interrogations, allow me to again make two announcements. And they are in regards to governance, and it has come out with our interactions with you. One, we need to make it clear, Bonasio allowed me to make it clear to them, that this program that has been running since Wednesday to today, we've not requested the Saccos to pay for it. That needs to come out clearly. Are we together? The only expense you've incurred is how you've come here in terms of transportation and also how you accommodate yourself. So there is no check written to Sasra. That needs to come out clearly. I know there were questions around that. Are we together on that? Okay. Number two, the fraudsters also take advantage of such programs. So you might find that in future, in a month or two, they will write letters similar to the one that we wrote to you, telling you they've organized something. Kindly make sure that you contact us before you react. Those were just some few announcements that, before I forget, you needed to appreciate. Now, without any order, what we'll do, the microphone will be passing. Just raise your hand. And what we agreed that whatever we discuss in this room remains in this room. The only thing that is going out is the action points that will better our services to the membership. So the already hands are up and the microphone is going on. Remind us of yourself, the Sacco you are coming from, then make a statement. Not to make a statement, be specific to the point, and also let's not repeat ourselves. If an issue has been asked, kindly don't repeat yourself. We are starting with who?
Okay. Yes, I have the mic. I'm Henry Ogoe. I'm the chairman of Airport Sacco. I wish to seek some clarifications on certain matters here. The first one is the number of directors. I can see a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 9. And I think good governance requires that a chair is not a member of a committee in the interest of objectivity, because committee reports end up in board meetings for deliberation and ratification. Now, what will happen in a case where you only have around 8 members being distributed to manage 4 committees? Because you may find a scenario where one director is almost in 3 committees, and even the effectiveness is compromised. Then the second one is on nomination committees. It will be made up of which group? Is it the management group or an ad hoc group? Then the third one is with respect to the strategic direction of a Sacco, which is enshrined in the strategic plan. It has been said here that SASRA needs to be aware. So I don't know whether their participation is at the formulation stage or once it has been formulated. And then from good practice, I think the interest of SASRA would be that the guidelines are well taken care of in the strategic plan for purposes of enforcement. I think in the interest of the number, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for being sensitive of the number. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Godfrey Saidi, Chairman Farid Sacco. Farid Sacco is found in Busia. I have an issue on the enumeration of the board. disclosure and transparency. I was following Mr. Sore. Is it Mr. Sore or Mr. Sore? Thank you very much. That as the board, we should be very much transparent to an extent of disclosing our remunerations to the general membership. Where I come from, that one, I think the AGM will not end. But I see where I come from. We tabulate our remunerations and then make them with our general membership. Where I come from, I'm repeating, the AGM will not end. At the chairman, umepata shilingi bilioni moja. Vote of no confidence. So the issue of disclosure and transparency, please leave it to the board. Am I communicating? Am I communicating? If we don't want to compromise the quality of services through wrangles in the leadership, there would be wrangles all over, there would be chaotic AGMs because of the disclosure and the transparency. Sasawa.
Thank you. You've made your case. Thank you.
Even Abraham, just to finish.
Okay.
Even when we read the Bible, did not disclose everything to Sarah. Even when you're intending to sacrifice.
Asante sana, Chairman.
Am I right?
Please.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Allow me to make direction. Chairman, allow me to guide the meeting. Otherwise, we'll go off. Let's just be very specific, make our case, and allow me to use my powers. I've not given you a chance for the microphone. Otherwise, we lose the meeting. But I'll make sure that you all talk. Let's go on the right. Yes, carry on.
How are you? My name is Eliud Kirikia.
Are you getting him up there? No. Yeah, please just check the mic.
Hello? Are you getting me now? Yes,
Okay.
my name is Eliud Kirikia, Egerton Sacco. Egerton Sacco.
Egerton.
Yes, kindly allow me to ask a question which is slightly outside governance, and it has something to do with statutory deductions.
We are struggling to get you.
Statutory deductions.
The point is, this session, there's an open session in the afternoon for other matters. So please, with all humility, let's keep governance. Then at 2, we have a sitting with the chairperson where other matters beyond this can be discussed. So you have the opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, just give to him. So are we clear on that? That's right now, we are just discussing the governance guideline. The other issues revolving other policy, legislative, and administrative issues, we have a good opportunity that we'll be discussing. Great. Carry on.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Paul Msava, Chairman Safaricom Sacco. I think mine is more of a suggestion based on the guidelines that have been shared this afternoon. And my suggestion is maybe on the SASRA, maybe it can play a greater role in either accrediting or approving auditors that Saccos interact with. I think it's a fact that if you look at what is happening in terms of poor governance, there's a great exposure in auditors. And so probably without being prescriptive on your website, you can list or play a greater role of accrediting auditors so that Saccos can be able to go to refer to that particular website or whatever source to confirm that these are approved creditors. I think the other piece is on our staff and CEOs and even service providers who commit either move from one Sacco to another, and there's no repercussions in terms of business. And so probably my view is that if you can be able to play this role as SASRA, I think the service providers and staff and other bodies who interact with Saccos can strive to do better business and generally improve our governance within the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. The CEOs in the house, the question looks similar to the previous one. Will be addressed. Now, up there, George. George, here. And also let me not lose those who are up.
Thank you. My name is Kefa Umwando. I'm the chairman Chuna Sacco, University of Nairobi. I needed to raise about 3 points in way of seeking clarification. Now, the vetting committee, which is in principle number 1, does it have a term limit? Or once constituted by the members at the AGM, or approved by the members at the AGM as the proposal is, they serve for how long? They should be composed of who and who. So the guideline there is not very clear. And then there is something else that you are bringing in, where you are saying that the vetting committee should consult with the authority. This one again now contradicts principle number 20, where the authority is supposed to give oversight. Because now if you get involved again in the process, that you are being consulted on the suitability of the candidates, it means you can say no to this person or no to this other person, then that contradicts now or even prolongs the process of electing directors. Then the other item I wanted to seek clarification on is principle number 5 on those letters. You said the directors, when they are elected, they should be given appointment letters. Who should sign those letters? Is it the commissioner? Is it the chairman? It is not very clear on who signs those letters. Then there was principle number 7, and that is the last one, so that I also leave room for the other members. Really, and one of the participants has tried to raise it, that if you tabulate how much you pay a director, and you put it in way of allowances, transport, even when we came here, for example, the facilitation we were given, you put it in a tabular form. We have seen, and we borrow from best practices, because we take a budget to the members for approvals during the AGM that caters for governance, for training of directors, for compensation of directors. But how then you use that budget? I've not even seen members of parliament tabulate to members that this is how I earned throughout the year. So that will open up a fight that we might not really be able to manage. Thank you. That's where I rest.
Thank you so much. We can respond to those, then we'll come back for another round. But I also need to remind you that at the back of the last page of your folder, there is a feedback form. You might not get an opportunity, all of us, to give feedback, but feel free at least to give them through writing using that feedback form. So let me invite panelists without any order to respond.
Hello, you can hear me? Thank you very much for those questions. One, it confirms that we are together in, this discussion. But now going specific to the questions at hand, I'll say, I think, firstly, the question of independence of the chairperson, I like that view that the chairman should not sit in any board to retain his independence. I think it's a conversation that we need to conclude. And that was touching also to the number. I think the number 5 to 9 was largely picked from the CAR 490, that you can operate with 5, but we know it's not optimal in terms of constitution. So given the complexity of the business, unless you are coming straight from inquiry, we expect your board to be operating with the maximum. Even us as an authority, we do have a challenge. Chairman can confirm when you have 5. Right now we have 5. Luckily today we've been added 1 by our CS. 6, it limits the composition of the board committees, yet they are supposed to support. So I agree with you. That number is said to be minimum. It's straight from California, so we may not debate that much because we expect you to be fully constituted, and where there is a vacancy declared and filled, I'm sure there are procedures for that. But I think the point about independence of the chair is critical, because we are grappling with that at this point. And indeed, good governance requires that there are committees, there are committee chairs, they process what the management has given, it goes to the full board, where chairman is a chair, independent. Now the chairs of committees are now submitting the papers. And that is what good corporate governance defines. So we would want to hear more comments on that, because that is what we would want to see, that the chair does not sit in any committees. The issue of numbers we have explained. And the question of vetting, I think it's more nomination and vetting committee. And the question of how long it should be in office and the like, I think in the regulations like 2020 and even the bylaws for 2011, we actually required you as a board to make policy around that. That you now, the terms and all that. So if you have one that is permanent, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself. I think just like you as a director, once elected, you have a term, the policy governing the nomination and vetting procedures should also talk about the establishment of the committee and how much it should serve. I would expect prudence will demand you stagger it. But I think perhaps we will hear the views from the floor. What is a practice? Because an area that we've not been very prescriptive, we allowed it to evolve from 2011. Some of you have practiced it. How is it working? And what has worked for who? What term should it be? So I'd say we have not prescribed the term. It is been left through the policy. You escalate. I think there is a question of strategic plan. At what stage do you involve SASRA? I think when you are scoping and developing a strategy, like my colleague said, we talk about stakeholder engagement. And by the way, for us, this forum, the issues you are bringing out, we are starting to prepare a strategic plan. So whatever you are picking here will form part of the industry issues in terms of the issues we shall pursue. So we are already collecting issues that are significant. But it is when you map out your stakeholders, where do you rank SASRA? For example, CCD or the director of cooperatives, and to what point do you? So it is, I would expect good practice that before you go, when you are mapping your stakeholders, you say, what is their importance? What is their interest? It is that point you say, can we engage SASRA? Some of you are consultants when you appoint them, your CEO writes, you write to us, and then that person comes and we can have open discussion. Because significant for us is not so much to discuss the institution, but it is a broader policy issues. Where are we going as an institution? It's more about scanning the legal and policy environment. And when you know that, then you are able to incorporate that. It is not so much, you might ask, what are the concerns? And some of you have come and so we can say, yeah, our number one concern for this is this issue. Then it is able to be discussed in your meeting. So I would say the earlier you come, the better, because once you have gone through the full hog, you give us your strategic plan, we shall raise questions, but you have already approved it. So I think it's at the stage of mapping stakeholders and the stakeholder analysis map, you know them, then you'll be able to. The issue of remuneration, disclosure, it's very interesting because we are talking about transparency and accountability. And I agree, the issue of disclosure of, what you've earned and all that will be used, can be misused. But I think it has also come from yourselves. We've gotten situations, I remember one case where the approved budget, the chair was taking nearly 50%, and the board members are raising concern. Okay, so I think for us is once you take the budget, are those resources being used for the benefit of the institution? And I'll tell you here, there are some of you seated that today you have made standing arrangements on governance audit. Part of reports is disclose what the directors are earning, because the members want to know, and we also want to know. Why is it that an institution is having a challenge? If you are facilitated to do the job, you are trained, you are facilitated with, all the resources you require, but the institution is not doing well. So how do you become accountable to the members? That's the question. We are saying that let us be bold enough to say, you gave us 50 million as a board to provide oversight to strategic direction, to train stakeholder attendant, all that. Yes, this is what we have spent. Yes, this is a breakdown through meetings, or are you spending all that through, trainings and all that, but the institution is going south. So you look at the objectivity. Yes, it is true the first year, there'll be hue and cry, hey, chairman, you won. But I'll tell you that those people will come, it will be disclosed, but the question will shift to, are you delivering? Because remember, they have approved the budget. How well are you using those resources for the good and benefit of those members? That is a overriding question, because there is, and I remember last week there was discussion about one of our Saccos listed, about the disclosure, the CEO's bonus and all that. Yes, does it raise any concern? Nothing, because the question is the board and the management delivering? For us, that's the view we are saying, that is about transparency. I agree with you, Chairman, of already the first year, but I'll tell you, they will remove you today, but whoever will come there, he'll disclose and realize, fine, I'm authorized to spend, but am I accountable that I've earned X and I can show it? Because you cannot be taking X% of the budget, but members, their dividends are going down. The members have a right to ask. So it's about, as leaders, asking ourselves, are we willing to be accountable to the members because we are facilitated to perform those duties? That is a question that we need to face, and not fear that, one sitting of the AGM, we think, yes, we are right, there'll be a replacement, that year 1, year 2, but ultimately, what is overriding goal? And I think that's the call we are being, especially for us who are, because one of the things we are doing is that as a member, owner, customer institutions, we are in a catch-22. You are there just for a season. Others will go. Other people come. And many times, some of you are being fought because there's a perception, this small Sacco that it was 2 billion, now it's 10 billion, that you are making a lot of money. But they are the ones who approve. And all this. So for us, it's about transparency, to agree that we are here as trustees for a season. Whoever comes, in fact, truth be told, in other jurisdictions, the position of directors are not attractive at all, because the level of work you do and what you are paid cannot be compared. Unlike in a corporate body where there are shares and there are these bonuses and all that. And since you have agreed, there is allowance, there is honoraria, some of you base it on performance, you are just being accountable to that. And if you are delivering to the members, I don't see it will be a challenge in the initial years, but in the long run, it is about transparency, accountability in this sector, because it has already happened in other, other comparable markets. Why don't we borrow the best practice? And those members who keep, raising issues will actually see, if you have to deliver, you have to facilitate the board. If you don't facilitate the board, then you cannot ask them to be, to deliver for you, because there's a lot of work required to deliver good performance. There are questions that, and that addresses a question of vetting committee and tabulation of allowances. I think my colleagues, especially Joseph, could comment on what I have not commented on. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add on the issue of the signing of the appointment letters. What is envisaged in the guidelines is that once election is done by the cooperative officer, that cooperative officer should be able to notify the director in that county that so-and-so has been elected as a director in Sacco X. And therefore, that director is supposed to issue the appointment letters, just to communicate the responsibilities and the expectations to this member, so that we are able to bring in some sanity and discipline in the conduct of the directors which are elected. And as I mentioned when I was making the presentation, we are seeing a lot of turmoil which is caused by new directors which are coming in. So that clause is supposed to address that so that those who are coming in afresh are able to meet the expectation which is expected of them. I hope I'm clear on that. Then there is the issue of accrediting external auditors. I think this it's just that the person who has raised it came in today. Yesterday we discussed all the issue to deal with external auditors and how now we will require them to apply for us before we produce the list, because previously we have been relying on the list from ISPAC and the list from the Commissioner of Cooperatives Office to enlist auditors. But going forward from the year 2023, we have a very stringent criteria of enlisting these external auditors so that we ensure that they are able to provide value for money when they are offering those services. So I think that concludes the questions which had been raised. We can go for another round of questions.
Rosalind, could you be having something to add?
Thank you, Peter. I think the CEO and Joseph have really tackled the questions, but maybe just to lay some emphasis on what the CEO said about the committees in terms of number of board and the composition, and what then Saccos would do. Indeed, probably when it is fewer members, sometimes it can be a challenge, but like you gave the example of the board where probably the board of the authority, there are 7. It depends now on the number of committees that you have. And these committees can be made functional so that you look at the skills within the board and you align them to the functions that you've attributed to each committees based on the number of board members. So yes, it's something that where there are challenges, of course, consultations can be done in terms of constitution and composition of those committees to ensure that the committees are there to help the board. Because the board cannot go into the details when you have a board meeting, because governance requires your board meeting should take at least 2 hours. So the committees are able to digest those things in details. They need to have the technical skills for the respective functions of the committee and then bring to the board. So with the numbers, if they're 7 to 9, where 5 is a challenge, those committees, as has been explained by the CEO, can then be handled easily. In terms of disclosures and compensation where there has been an issue of it will bring a fight, again, this is really dependent on how an institution is running their business. And as the CEO says, in terms of governance, one of the critical things that is being considered now is remuneration. And not only to the board, even remuneration to the staff and the whole structure of the organization. So it is a debate that when there is disclosure and transparency in about how we report it, then everybody feels satisfied in the institution. As a board, the compensation is commensurate to the business. As a staff, the compensation is commensurate to the business, and everybody along the whole spectrum of the institution. And that helps us when we are more transparent. Even the people we run the business on their behalf feel a sense of belonging that, yes, everything is there for us and we know that our Sacco is safe. So when you talk about the integrated reporting, in terms of annual reports, then those are some of the things that you have to, be big on to be able to know where we are. Yesterday, somebody says in Saccos, we do not probably sell profit, but it is trust. When there is transparency and disclosures, then even the level of confidence within those institutions is enhanced, and you bring in a lot of capital in terms of members and deposit growth. So I think that's what I wanted to add in addition to what had been responded to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jeremy, could you be having something just to add a little, or you're fine? Okay, fine. Again, allow me to give direction. We'll be having a balanced discussion. I want to give the first opportunity to the people up. Remember, we also have people up there. So if there is anybody up there who wants clarification or a question, it is a chance for you before we come down. Yes.
Good afternoon, Nita. I'm CPR Buyabo. I want a clarification on principle number 5, which reads that the Sacco should ensure all newly elected directors sign an appointment letter issued by the chairperson upon certification by the Commissioner of Cooperatives.
Thank you so much. Because it was very brief, so they can get 2 opportunities. Anybody up there again? Okay, in the absence of that, I'm coming down, but with a condition that I need a lady. Otherwise, us men will dominate. Director, Professor is here? Okay. Tutaendelea vizuri. All of you will get an opportunity, but we have to have a balanced discussion.
Thank you, our MC, the panelists, and all the colleagues. Mine, first of all, is like a question, and I want to revisit the issue of the enumerations. And I was wondering whether the guidelines that we are giving, the governance guidelines, can be more specific as to guide how we should be giving remunerations, maybe based on some categories. If we categorize and say maybe based on these categories, if it's the staff salaries, they should be allowed this category. If it is the remuneration of the board, then we say, we give more guidelines. Because when I look at for example, the state corporations, because I also come from that world, we are given very specific guidelines so that if we have a council of a particular university, we know what we expect. The universities do not go sitting and guessing how they are going to remunerate both their staff and even their board members. So it is a question I know we are private sector, but maybe we can debate about it. The second one is about the Sacco directors training, which Joseph was almost saying that it is no longer there. I want to first of all to say that it is there. Apart from being in Sirika, I also come from the university, so I can also now talk on their behalf. It is still there, but the problem has been the turnout for training. If it is because, as it was said, because of the cost, that can be discussed. And the cost can be discussed. The exams, I think we have to do them because even the RBA one which was quoted, we got there, I'm also a trustee, and we go there and we have to sit for exams. Because if we don't do that, we shall have these trainings, people will start demanding that we take them to the coast, and people will be at the beach, they will not even be learning. So it is important that we certify directors when they have passed. So it is still there. Maybe the question is there a way we can regulate like the RBA where they say within 6 months of your election to the board, you undergo that training, because that can help. Those who have gone through the training can tell us, and they can attest that it makes a lot of difference when you have gone through the training than when you have not.
Thank you so much. Great. So whoever microphone reaches first.
Thank you so much, moderator. Thank you so much, Njuguna and your team. My name's Gordon Opio, Vice Chair Magadi Sacco. I had 3 questions, but thank you, CEO, for clarifying. 2 are best suitable for afternoon plenary session. However, picking from what our colleague, the chair from Chuna said, we did not get proper clarification on the mandate of on the issues of the nominating committee on this specific aspect, as far as their remuneration is concerned. Of course, you realize if you add them to the 9, that means we'll go beyond the stipulated required number of board members. So basically, the remuneration issues, when it's not well managed, then it becomes a source of conflict. Are they entitled to, what are the entitlement in terms of their sitting allowances? For how many times do they have to sit in a year? All that kind of thing. Now that we have in the electioneering period, we know they are playing what our colleagues in IBC are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we go to the next, allow me to guide again. Since the CEOs have remaining only with 30 minutes in the room, can we just give them also a chance? Any CEO who has a question, it is not a must, but if you have, then you can speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel. From Mentor Sacco. One is just a general comment. You sent this document, but USA used to set interactive documents. This one was not interactive, therefore.
Microphone.
Hello?
Yes, carry on.
It was not interactive, therefore I couldn't comment on the document and send back to you. So I was forced to write on a paper. So next time, be sending interactive documents that you comment on. The other one is the structure of the document. The previous one, the 2015 one, was user-friendly because the guidelines were numbered. And therefore, as a leverage document, I would request that you refer to the previous document where the guidelines are numbered, and it is easier when you're even guiding the board on where you want to you're proposing an issue where you cite it better. Now, as it is now, you cannot even cite a guideline that you intend to use in developing your internal good governance policy. The other one is that you did not clearly indicate this document was intended to guide us Saccos to develop our own internal governance document. I personally used it quite intensively when developing. The other clarification I need, it has not is on the size and the composition of the nominating committee. The other clarification is the time frame of consulting SACCO on determining the suitability. The Cooperative Societies Act only provides for 35 days before elections. I don't know whether you're in a position to accommodate that because occupied. And the other clarification is the circulation of age. That this is an addition to the 2015 guideline. It says voting at the AGM should be conducted in accordance with the bylaws and the minutes of the circulated to members soonest. We require guidance on that. For interest of time is on page 20 on directors' compensation. Because I'm where I'm now referring to because it is just a
Oh, sorry, we are losing you. Can we get a replacement for microphone? Just pass the red one. We got all the points except the last one, please. Just get the correct microphone. But in the meantime, as the microphone passes, I'll make a humble appeal to you that especially the issues regarding the format, when you go back, kindly don't worry, even if it is a PDF, you can send an email.
I'll do that.
Yeah, please. Okay.
The final one is a clarification on Principle 7 on directors' compensation. I said I am not able to cite where it is because you have not numbered the guidelines. It says that board should ensure the AGM and the budget approval exercise should not be allocated the same day. For the Saccos not in the delegate system, and I know we are quite a number, that will be quite expensive, hectic, because to convene 20,000 members twice in a year, just to discuss one agenda over the budget. I don't know, we require more guidance on that and the funding of the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much. These two words have been up for a long time. So, microphone here.
My name is James Boy.
Oh, somebody else. Okay, fine. Carry on. James, carry on.
Yes, and
then give there. Okay.
And I just wanted to get some further comments from the panelists on two areas. One of them is where the board is supposed to ensure there is a skills mix at the board. Yet the board is not supposed to determine who is supposed to be elected or not elected. So just a comment from the panelists on how they would guide us on that one. And especially for some of us who are in the rural areas, some of these skills might be a challenge. And the other one is the issue of representation, where you ensure that all members are properly represented at the annual general meeting, if through the delegate system, at the same time at the board. So how do we ensure that that happens? Just comments from panelists.
Thank you so much. Can we allow the panelists to respond to those? Then we'll just come around again. Please.
Thank you very much. I thank you, Professor, on the Sacco Director training, confirming it still is on. And the question I throw to the forum, especially directors, is can we, one, and maybe that can even be an afternoon discussion, do we need this, is this training still relevant, and how do we revamp it? Because one of this, I keep saying, when an industry matures, there is a certain knowledge, minimum knowledge that you need to have. And I think the attempt, the vision of that program, Sacco Director Development Program, and where we were partnering with the corporate university, is to make sure that directors, prospective, and even those who are on board, they have a structured body of knowledge that they can build. And the idea was that you build from 101, and then you go, whether it's board committees that you form, there are relevant trainings to understand the knowledge. I mean, to deepen your knowledge. We appreciate there is a room for conferences, retreats, workshops, but there is a structured program where it ensures the body of knowledge required of you as director, there is a way it is structured. And for us being people in the Sacco industry, it is possible. The size and all that, it is possible. And when you actually think about those who are even smaller than us, where do they grow up in the dark? Like the ones now we just onboarded. For them right now, we are doing training. We've been going around, and you can see there is a hunger for knowledge, even for those directors. They are telling us, just train us. How often? And therefore, there is a question we need to say, because we have walked the journey. How do we develop this to the next level? And our vision was that you will have yourself as professional directors, same way like other companies, and there is a body knowledge that can be validated independently by an institution like a university or other professional bodies. That was our vision. I think we need to hear, is it still relevant, and how do we deal with it, rather than, us trying this, trying that. So I think it's there. And for me, the question of cost perhaps is an interesting one to ask, because in this room, if I may ask with all humility, how many have attended the credit union development educator? How many have attended those trainings? We have sponsored people. How many? Yeah? if you don't shy, you know, there are a number of you that have a very few, a handful. But Credit Union Development Educator is a very good program. It is good, and there is Africa, there is international, and I know as institutions we sponsor people and go. But when we want to, and that is developed by them out there, the principles can be applied here, but our desire is Kenya Sacco industry is respected not only in Kenya, Africa, but globally. What is that body of knowledge that we can now package and sell even to our neighbors? It will come from you as a leaders. It's a very practical experiential learning. And therefore, Prof, the university should not give up. We still remain available, but we wanted that to be industry driven and our corporate investors to handle that. I think it's a conversation we'd want to hear from you, because I think it's an area that will be very, very useful if we're able to address that. Now, the question of remuneration, whether for directors or nomination committee, one, remember the conversation, and Prof, you asked this, the remuneration, I take it that is for the directors. They'll combine the one for nomination. There is a ask that can we have some structure like in, state corporations, we are guided. So my director is remunerated, is guided, okay, by SRC and SCAC, because they are drawing public funds. Now, when it comes to private institutions like yourself, the large tier 1 Sacco, how they can afford and the efficiency is a business decision. Now there is the other smaller one now, so it is very difficult for us to dictate that, because even in banking industry, a smaller tier 3 bank cannot pay the same salary or even allowances to their directors or staff. It is a very business-led decision. And that's why for us, we'll be very hesitant to actually, we ask questions, how do you decide your allowances? We leave it to you. The question is, you might decide to pay even 50 or 20. Some of you public sector drawing members from, you have borrowed from SCAC that you can say we'll pay, our benchmark is a SCAC or the, so it is an area that I will not say as an institution you want to go to, respecting that you are businesses, and even where your salaries and all that should be driven by what is your vision as a board? How competitive you want to come? And the remuneration that you feel is reasonable enough for your time and the efforts. And like I said last week, the conversation when banks said, the top bank said, reported how much the disclosure in the audited financial statement, you can see the variance was so big, even though they are in tier 1. That is a business decision. CBK or CMA will not query, why are you paying so much? No. It is an institution that has decided to compensate their board, their executive team and staff this way, because they know where they are going and you are the drivers of the vision. So again, that's a conversation I throw back to you. We don't expect to draw any guideline any soon. On the nomination, whether they should be paid, again, very good question that keeps coming. And again, I'll say we want to hear from you. What is your experience? Because I think we gave those bylaws in 2011. What is your experience in the nomination committee? At least I know my Sacco is not here, but they have it. Nomination committee, how you enumerate them. Remember, these are facilitative. When you meet for the business, which is very clear, defined, it has a starting and end. They finish. It's not a continuous job. So it's more facilitative allowances, which I imagine it cannot be cannot be far off from what you as chairpersons at the board have decided. So again, these are policy issues within your control, because these are your colleagues, members whom you're incorporating and you believe. And therefore, for me, the substantive issue about vetting and nomination committee is one. The substantive issue is, who are we getting value from this nomination committee? Have we drafted? Are we convinced we are getting value from it? Those who have it, so that the question of how you enumerate the composition now becomes secondary. We need it. What does it do? How does it strengthen governance? Answer that question first. If we answer that, facilitation will be very easy, because it will be enumerated like other directors, or this way or this way. So for again, these are weighted questions for the chairpersons here, especially those with the nomination committees. They are there. What is your experience? What has worked and what has not worked? How can the same be improved? And what is your vision as a board? How competitive you want to come? And the remuneration that you feel is reasonable enough for your time and the efforts. And that's why for us, we'll be very hesitant to dictate that, because And I wish, I know Mr. Wanjohi also may chip in that in terms of, what you've seen. Maybe from the end, you may have something to add. The secularization of minutes, I will invite our colleague from the State Department. The question, your take about the issue of secularization of minutes and guidance are out there, because that's largely what we are echoing is largely, we are just trying to kind of amplify what is in CAM 490. Just like Companies Act, which is very, very strong on, matters, AGM and all that. CAM 490 is also there, but we also are open to best practices. Now, the skills mix in the board. I think that question is predicated on the fact that we have an elective board, true. And if I imagine we have farmer-based Sacco somewhere, we have university-based, we have all this. So it raises a question, how do we ensure? But again, is a conversation that will also happen at the board. And we are seeing a lot of that happening, because a skills mix, it has to be defined at the board level, the needs. What kind of, as a board, to be effective as a board, because you want to be effective and efficient. How do you achieve that? What skills do you require? And then even you may not necessarily get them from entirely from the market, your membership, but you can attempt to make sure that you are having people who have an idea about ICT, may not be a graduate, but there is an exposure. And that's why, that's why personally, I was sad when we removed the proposal to have the question of independence. Directors, graduates, Sacco Central team here accommodated it. It's to accommodate those extreme skills that you may not have, because administrative skills, accounting skills, you will have someone who has been practicing a bazaar in a school. You will say that person has a good understanding in accounting. So there is a way within your context you can say, how do we achieve the balance? And the Saccos that have done doing that, what we see is that they, 90 days, for example, to the AGM, they send out the invitation that we are looking for experience in HR, ICT, or accounting. Can they express? But knowing your membership, you will not say certified accountants or HR professionals. You will word it to make sure that you are getting people, whether it's general administrators, people who will aid in that conversation. Again, as a board, the vision, when you are sitting that of what is a vision for your Sacco, that will shape and you become realistic. Because the more you educate your members, and they are seeing a lot of you educating delegates, you're already building capacity. Because now you realize coming to the board is not just how popular I am. There is something I have to offer. So it's something work in progress. There is no straight answer. But I would say for urban Saccos, I've seen that attempt. James asked that question, and I know it can be a challenge given the demographic profile. But I would say there must be an attempt. Otherwise, you'll do a very good trajectory, because the current board has recruited the management who are driving the agenda very clear. There is harmony. There is a chemistry between the two. Then there is a change. And we are seeing this. Even a chairman or key person dying or exiting the board, then there is turmoil, because the people who come there think we are in charge here and you have to listen to us. So I think that's where these kind of things we are saying we have to make an attempt, whichever way within our membership, to make sure that we are giving direction that this is not a job for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. There is something you are bringing and you must justify that. What is that? That is why nomination committees are proposed as a way of filtering, because many people who would be having that, you find they may not necessarily be the elective process. They will shy away. But when you ask him to complete this form, you'll get 10 people to choose from. Then you'll actually be able to say, okay, this, I think his experience, this is, we can work on it. And then you complement that with induction programs, then you find we shall get there. So we have to reimagine our future and not be scared by where we are coming from, because granted, our institutions are becoming more and more sophisticated, and we need to start making those baby steps towards there. I think the question of member representation, I'll give how can we ensure adequately represented? I think Joseph could comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bwana CEO. I think on the issue of membership representation, we throw it to you because you are the people who understand your membership. And when you are strategically planning to expand, open your common bond into new areas, you need to incorporate that in your governance system so that people are not left out. I will tell you from where we sit, currently we are having some very serious cases where specific members or individual members of Saccos have taken us to court because they believe that they were not consulted when the Saccos were making certain investments, which has now resulted into critical loss. So the guideline is only suggesting that you need to ensure that members are adequately represented so that when it comes to the decision making, especially on the AGM, they also participate. When you are electing the delegates, you ensure that you create certain categories of these new members who have come on board so that they do not feel that they are left out of the governance systems and processes within the Sacco. I also want to address the issue of the vetting committee because an issue has been raised as to whether the vetting committee or the nomination committee is part of the 4 committees which we are recommending. It is not, because these are outsiders. You might decide to include a bishop within your locality into this vetting committee. You look at people of high integrity who will be able to vet and bring good people with good character on board. So it is not part of the 4 of the board committees which we are recommending. There's also the issue of suitability in terms of consultation of the authority when during vetting, the period or the timeline. There is no timeline. The guideline only requires that you at least notify us that you are in the vetting process and a number of individuals have shown interest to be elected in the board. Do we have any reservations on those kind of people? So there is no specific timelines. And I've seen even from a number of Saccos that during the time they are recruiting key staff, they are now referring to us and asking us if we have reservations. And we have saved a number of situations. For instance, in the area of IT, you find that an IT officer has been sacked in Sacco A and is getting a job in Sacco B, and Sacco B does not have clear background of this person. So when they write to us seeking that kind of clarification, then because we are now building that database, we are able to inform you that even as you are about to make this decision, please consider ABC concerning the candidate. So it is important that the vetting committee, before they conclude the exercise, they also inform us. There are also incidences, and especially now, the director there who has asked this question, where we remove directors from office and the law bars them from serving for a certain period of time. Maybe this person would also want to show interest, and the period upon which he has been barred to serve in any other Sacco has not elapsed. So it is important that you also involve us. I do not see how this will bring in conflict of interest when now we are supervising the Sacco when we participated in the vetting process. Because even the CEOs, for instance, the regulations for the non-DT now requires that the authority approves a person to be appointed as a CEO of a non-deposit taking Sacco. That does not mean that we will now not supervise this person because we participated in bringing him on board. Thank you.
Maybe just one more thing to add on what the CEO said in terms of skills gap. Indeed, probably there'll be some Saccos where certain skills may be missing. And at the point of immediately after the appointment, what then the board will be expected to do together with the management is to assess the skills gap within the board and train the board based on the identified skills gap, so that at the beginning, the trainings can be targeted to address the challenges of skills gap. And this will ensure, in terms of deliberations, the committees of the board are efficiently facilitated to discharge their duties at respective levels. I think the other issue I wanted, in terms of consultation of the authority at the nomination stage, I know CEO has something that you'd want to say on that.
Yeah, I think the vetting, I think it is coming up, and I hear your concerns. I think it's something we can look to, because there are two levels where there are staff. Staff is very easy, and we have some of you, we have actually advised you about staff. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of communication on that. There is incidences where by the third Sacco is when we are actually learning that this person messed here is not paid you alone, but you are keeping quiet. And at times it takes us to go to inspection is when you realize, so this person left, but you have not, but he's working in another Sacco, but he defaulted. Those are things that are sharing. But for the director, especially new persons, there's a question, in addition to what I explained, that if you know, that is could apparent perceived conflict, but I think the question is the information we have at times is useful, but there's a way it can be handled in a way that we don't get tangled. We don't, you know, like the way currently we're having IEBC and the issue of marrying people, we don't want to be caught up with that, because most of the information we would use would ideally be in your custody. If it's a directive, it's a removal. So it behoves you, when the vetting is happening, to provide the committee with all that information. That then will minimize the eventuality that this person, otherwise any available external information on that person could even be available with the CLBs and the like, in terms of financial integrity. So I think there is a work on the nomination vetting. What are the sources of information? Because that information has to be credible. It is a Sacco, it is inspection, inquiry, search reports, and then other sources that have a legal backing. Because you cannot bar someone based on, you know, imaginations and all that. It's an area that, you know, in Kenya, litigation has come to my rights. It's a very, very strong area. So I think so far the nomination committees, I'm still looking to hear, especially in the afternoon, how those nomination committee has worked for those who have, so that because an area that is a developing area, and we need to see how it can be enhanced. Thank you.
Thank you. The intention is to release you at 1:45, but the ball still is in your court. We can take some few rounds and give the panelists again a chance to respond to. We might not be able to exhaust everything, and I still remind you that we do have a feedback form, which you can also make good use of it. It doesn't mean that if you've not had a microphone, then your issues will not be heard. We have several channels. So yes, those two gentlemen have been, their hands have been up for a long time.
Okay, thank you, Peter, our CEO. We are doing well. I'm Julius Zioka, Chair Kwetu Sacco. Much of my questions have been answered, but one is about the chair. That should not be with a subcommittee. I think the chair is always in the Finance and Administration Committee. The chair is supposed to sign the books of accounts. Then if he is not there, doesn't know what is happening. But then with the other subcommittees, then the chair should not be there. But it should be in the Finance and Admin. Then two, there is the issue of evaluation of the board. Peter, I want to say all these institutions are result-oriented. They are evaluated by their performance. For example, when SASRA started, I was there. We have been evaluating the performance of SASRA, the growth of deposits, security, and you can say tick. If a Sacco has brought you the books and you have seen the performance, then the board has performed. It's like the schools. If the results are good, then the teachers have worked. Why should they be evaluated again? So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's carry on.
Thank you. My name is Charles Mbuvi, Chairman Nyati Sacco. Mine is just to get clarity from Sastra. These are guidelines. Are they all mandatory? Or is it a mix of mandatory requirements and good practice? And if that is the case, can we coin the language in such a way that is very clear in terms of what is mandatory and what is recommended? And for those that are mandatory, what are the consequences for non-compliance? Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so much. I have 3 issues. One has been raised by my colleague, but I still want to talk about it. About the chairman, not to be. No, let's start.
But I'm requesting that we should not repeat ourselves, please. If you've raised an issue and your colleague has raised an issue, we've picked it.
Charles
Kindly, so that we give everybody a chance.
Okay. Chairman Taraji, just on the same, because it is said, and it was said that a conversation needs to be put to a halt. The chairman don't be members of any committee. And then at the same time, it is said that the back stops with the chairman. I would want the regulator to come out clearly on how the chairman should actually get the engagement with the Sacco, so that we know. Because if that is the case, then the chairman will visit the Sacco once in a month. If that is the case, how come the back stops the chairman? 2 is on the composition. The composition and the term of reference for the vetting and nomination committee. You will not answer that. Who is supposed to be in the vetting committee? 3rd, you did indicate that once directors have been elected, then there is some kind of letter that will be written to directors of cooperatives in the county government. I want to say that most and majority of these directors actually are detached from the Saccos. They do not even know they are on. What has the commission and the authority done to capacity build these directors? Because the cooperative movement is evolved, so that they know they are on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This guy here has been up for a long time. Yeah, please. And keep it short, please.
Asante Sama, I know how to bring things short now because I've read the mood of the people. These are all guys, they are tired and they want to prove, they don't want long sentences. One.
Just remind us of yourself and the Sacco, please.
Yes, I'm Nyamachiko Jones Maroa from State Kenya Sacco, from Migori County. The rest of all things have been mentioned. I think what I want to summarize is that reconsider the several questions asked. That is 1. 2, the 3 years period that we have in the board. If you go by other institutions, they run 5 years. In fact, 3 years. When you are serious manager, you want to implement a 5 years period strategic plan. Where will it take you? Can you revisit that 3 years? If you don't allow everybody to go for 5 years, the chairman can be allowed to run for 5 years so that he monitors the strategic plan that has been drawn. Thank you so much.
The 3 year. Okay. No, it's not coming out clearly that the chairman, you have three years in the board. Okay. In fact, we've picked it. Wow. Up there, is there something? These guys might dominate you, not knowing that your colleagues are up there. Yes, there is microphone up. Is there do you have microphone up there? As the microphone goes, there is a gentleman who has grabbed the microphone. Let's give him a chance.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, my hand has also been up for a very long time. I'm Chris Agunga from Kimisitu Sacco. I just have one question in terms of the committees. What was really what really guided putting governance under credit and education? Because I believe governance more fall in the administration and that other committee as it was put in. Then the other thing is the guideline really talks about AGM without a mention of ADM, but you'll agree with me that most of us seated here are either in ADM or are in the process of going ADM way. So it really needs to be very clear to provide a good guidance, even as we go to ADM or we have to maintain ADM. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are up. Microphone has reached there.
Thank you very much, CPA William Puga from Ushuru Sacco. I just seek one clarification on principle number 4 on recruitment. And it talks of the board appointing the CEO and participating in selection of management staff. Just a bit of clarity on this word, participating in selection of management staff. And then what happens to other staff? Thank you very much.
Okay, again, allow me to give guidance. The time also has to be managed. I know the discussion is very sweet. All is not lost. After lunch, we have a plenary. There is no specific agenda or topic to be discussed, but to give you a chance to air views. So if at all you've not received a microphone, don't feel that you're a loser. There is still time that we'll discuss so that we can also work within the confine of the program. Now, if that's the case, then I'll only give one last person a chance to ask a question, but the rest now you'll hold. When we come back from lunch, we'll be having a plenary, though in the absence of the CEOs, but the issues now will be addressed. In that session, we'll open it to anything that you think needs to be discussed. So for this, I'm giving a lady. If at all it's there, I'm not forcing, but an opportunity if there is a lady with a burning question. In the absence of that, let's get, they have donated for us that opportunity, gentlemen, so we can, okay, they have a microphone. Yes, give him.
Oh, fine. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name is Noah Ngwenyi, Paraton Sacco. Paraton Sacco is found in Nandi. Mr. Chairman, I have a few points to make. One is a commendation that there is a document that is being discussed. In whichever manner, I think it's a commendation to do that. Number two, any such type of governance document should have a definition of terms so that we can know the boundaries between which when we mean this or that. Mr. Chairman, number three, I want to make this that when I read through the whole document, and the two seem to be okay. But when we come to application number 3, in all those regulations, I see some seeping in of what they term as mission creep. Why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? Because we are a semi-formal organization. Because they are not pure public institutions. So if you want to overregulate, it is going to create some secondary complications, which tends to weaken these institutions. For example, knowing the diversity of our taking Saccos, they come from all over. It is not fair that go the silo way in listing the qualifications of directors, because you can never be exhaustive. It's well-meaning, but it's taking this organization to the wrong direction, because many of those circles may not necessarily have those qualifications you are looking for. And perhaps we might emphasize on those qualifications at the expense of integrity and ethical conduct and so on, which are probably the major threats to this industry. And finally, I wish that at the introductory part of this document, we look at the finance sector industry, because at the moment we know the fintechs have taken over by virtue of the volume of credit that is going around through those fintechs. There is a revolution which has taken place. So why would we get a minor sector which is controlling only 82 billion shillings versus fintechs which handle more than probably 4 or 5 billion shillings a day, and they are leading to poverty of our unsuspecting youth. So we need to look at the industry at large and see whether the document we are coming up with is giving direction of this industry to meet the goals, whether it is sustainable development goals or whatever, which will 2030 and so on, so that we are within certain borders, and in which case we should evaluate this document in terms of the substance in relation to that of
Thank you. Point made. Point made. Allow us to respond, but I recall that Mr. Wanjoy, you had an issue that you needed to respond to before we pass the microphone to Roslyn to clarify on why the chairman is not sitting in the board committees. That was coming out loudly. Please.
Thank you.
Would you like to stand? They see you as you respond. They love it like that.
Okay.
Yes.
I will stand. So I will respond on the area of nomination committee, then the role of county directors of cooperatives. Then there was an issue of the term of office of the directors, and then the AGM versus AGM. On the nomination committee, this is one of the interventions that we have borrowed from SASRA guidelines in our bill, where now we are proposing that this one should be a requirement for all types of cooperatives. And during stakeholders validation meetings, it was generally agreed that a nomination committee shall consist of not more than 5 persons, and then the composition shall be a representative from the director, county director for cooperatives, CEO, and other members appointed by the general meeting from either a professional body or from the regions. And then the term of office, it was agreed that it will be appointed every year. For example, during the current general meeting, we appoint for the next year. Then when they have conducted their nomination and everything, then the term is renewed for the following year. Then on the issue of the role of the county directors of cooperatives, we have been having a problem in this area, given that the cooperative function is devolved, and at the moment, the only regulatory framework available for cooperatives, especially for all cooperatives, is the Corporate Societies Cap 490, which is being administered by the commissioner. So whatever the directors are doing at the moment is a delegated function from commissioner. So you can see here the inconsistency. So even training them has been a problem. But now the current bill, when enacted, will really define the role of the commissioner vis-a-vis that of one of the director for cooperatives, where the director for cooperatives will be responsible for supervision and regulation of all primary cooperatives apart from those Saccos that are under the armpit of the SASRA. And then the national government through the commissioner shall be responsible for registration, policy, capacity building, and standard for all cooperatives. Then on the issue of the term of office for directors, you can remember when we were having stakeholder meetings for the policy. The policy had proposed that the terms of directors to be 2 terms of 5 years each, and then after serving for 2 terms, you are gone. And the proposal was based on the issues of the strategic plan for long-term planning, so that they can be there for at least 5 years and at most 10 years. But you'll also remember this one was thrown out, and the stakeholders generally agreed that we retain the 3 under rotation system that we have at the moment. So we go by that, and that is what we have put in our bill. Then the issue of the AGM and ADM. At the moment, the ADM is not supported by any legal framework. The current Act, Corporate Societies Cap 490, has provided for AGM. But sometimes back, because of the logistic problems, the commissioner established ADM through a circular. So this is a very weak kind of a system, and because of that, in the bill, in our draft bill, we have anchored the position of the delegate system. It is now anchored in the current bill. So when enacted, now it will be anchored in law. And in that, we have made it optional, depending those who want direct representation is okay. Those who want to go for the delegate system, they can do that. But what we have done now, we have also limited the role of the delegate system. There are some resolutions can only be passed by the full general meeting. For example, on liquidation, amalgamation, and such. Just a limited number of them that are very weighty will be limited to the actual members' general meeting. But the others, if a cooperative opts for the delegate system, then you will continue the way you have been doing business. Then what was the other one? I think I'm through.
Thank you, Peter. Maybe to speak to the issue of board chair not sitting in the committees. I think going by the statistics that the CEO did provide in the morning when we started, we are able to see the evolution that has happened within the Sacco subsector. And as we speak now, we're almost going into very soon a trillion sector. That means the business has really grown. And while appreciating the uniqueness of cooperatives, again, we have to then embrace the best practice that will guide us as a board to be able to remain independent at whatever roles that we're playing. Now, the idea of the board, the chair not sitting in the committee, is when you come to the full board, it is the chair who will be guiding the meeting. He's supposed to have independent mind to be able to objectively look at the reports which are coming from the committee and guide the board in making a decision that will help in steering the institution to achieve the objectives. And that is why when it comes to composition of the committees, there's emphasis on the skills that are relevant to the respective committees. So the expectation is while the reports are digested at the committee level, which depending on the committee, some of them may have a number of meetings to look at the critical issues, then those issues are synthesized and made in a manner that they can now be understood by all board members and presented to the board at the meeting. So in ideal situation, the committee chair is supposed then to present the report to the full board, where now the chair is sitting. So imagine a situation where, again, the chair is the chair of a committee or a member of the committee, and then is expected to present a report. It does not relate to good governance practice. So as we evolve, and as the cooperative sector and now these big financial institutions that we are managing, we cannot therefore be left behind. We have then to see how we are evolving and embracing that. The issue was, the question was, the chair, takes the responsibility. Again, when it comes to responsibility or digesting issues, where the board has made a decision, then they are collectively and severally responsible. Where there is a board decision that has decided, then the board remains collectively responsible. But where probably in some instances where the chair goes beyond and probably sometimes makes unilateral decision, then you'll be held responsible as that person who made unilateral decisions. So as a board, you have that collective, and severally as individuals, you can also be called to account depending on the issue at hand. So these are things which we appreciate. The business we are managing now has grown into size and complexity, and participating at every committee, maybe a chair 2 or 3 committees, then again you have to come and chair the board, does not resonate very well with the best practice when it comes to corporate governance. Allow me, before again I give the CEO the microphone, just to also respond on the board evaluation. One of the question was, we have the financial reports, and from the financial reports, we should be able to assess and say that, yes, the board has performed. I want to say, when we talk of now the board evaluation, it will go beyond just the financial statements and look at, as a board, how are you carrying out your duties? Are you carrying out within the governance parameters? What processes have you put in place? Are you understanding? You'll be evaluated. Are you understanding your role as the board? One of the members said that the county cooperative, these directors don't understand their roles. So then in the evaluation will be, how well do you understand your role? So it goes beyond just the financial statements, but it looks at, there's a board evaluation tool that looks at various parameters. When it comes to issues of staff, how are you handling? Are there structures that have been set in place to guide all those processes? So I would say it would go beyond the financial statements. While the financial statements may look good, there may be certain parameters that needs improvement. And when we evaluate ourselves, we're able to say, where are we doing good? We pat ourselves on the back. Where do we need to improve? Then we come up with strategies on how we can improve on those parameters where we are not doing well, and hence the essence of board evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind, for that. I think our colleague from CCD, Mr. Anjoy, has responded to the issue of nomination. Thanks for actually clarifying where is it we are going. I think that we are guided. I think the role of chair, I will still add, in addition to what you said, that as a chair, you're not saying you sit there and just wait for the reports. One, practically, you should be setting the agenda. There is a standard monitoring. There is a budget. Perhaps you have a standard report on this and that. Those are standard. But I think for you, you should be ahead, and that's how you work with the CEO to say, what are the issues as working with your CEO that need to be, discussed. You develop the agenda together. Even the agenda, if it's even those regular reports, there are questions you are asking, and it is you now who is driving the agenda of the meeting. But by being present, then not you does not necessarily make you a better chairman. It's how strategically you guide the vision and ensure that you hold the committees to account. Because by being in the kitchen and then coming there does not mean that you can. There are many ways that you can actually, and that's really what we are looking at, that elevate yourself to a level where there is a board work plan. You are very clear what you should achieve this quarter, and the CEO, you are able to converse with the CEOs, and CEO, as he goes to the board committees through his functional manager, he says credit. He's able to give, because CEO knows my target on credit, for example, default is 3%. As he discussed with the committee dealing with credit, that will be a matter that will be discussed. But for you, you have a very clear expectations on how the institution should be driven. It is move yourself from the operational things. you are at strategic level, you are very clear of the strategic objectives. That is what you should monitor. That is really what you are saying. The chairman must move to that level. Let's acknowledge that we are coming from a history where the framing and how we have developed the small circle, like say here for this hotel, the board will even be called management committee. It does everything. But I think what is evident, the institution we are discussing today, even if you want as a chair, and I'll tell you where we have seen you getting to operations, those are the people who get into a lot of trouble. And we have seen it. So please, for your own good, have structures, have board charters that hold your chair of this committee to account, and they report to you. That does not dilute your position and your authority and powers as a chair. So I think it's a mind shift, literally, and I think some of you are already there, because given the size of the institution, you have no time to be there all the time. And I think evaluation has been spoken to. I would say there is implicit evaluation. You report to the members, you reported good dividends, you have done well, pat on the back. But I think the whole idea of board evaluation gives you, as a chairman, to actually identify what are the gaps, who needs to be, because the results will show collective. But there are some directors, some members of the committee, some committees that need support, given the strategic position of the institution. Today, we are doing well. Cybersecurity is here. Who is dealing with cybersecurity? Is there enough knowledge, awareness in the board about matters cybersecurity? That becomes an area of development for the board. So the board evaluation, the implicit one, I agree it's there. And we will not have a meeting with you, call you for prudential meeting if you are doing okay many a times. But we are encouraging that. When you are doing bad, we shall even call you. So it's evaluation. But I think the explicit board evaluation is critical for board role, strategic, and over. That's what we are leading, that we should embrace these practices so that we know that indeed you are self-evaluating yourself. Otherwise, the market will overtake you. So that's really the futuristic way we are looking at board evaluation. I think the question of recruitment, sorry, I thought my colleague would speak to that, but you'll find that the board, you have a responsibility. And actually, you'll find in any statutes, even in our act, the board is responsible for recruiting. But the law also, and practically, you delegate. And that's why you recruit the CEO and possibly level 2 managers. You know, or at times you go to level 3, but you just level 2, level 1 and 2. That's your job. But as you delegate to the others, then it is not selection and participation. There must be clear policies saying the board will recruit CEO and level 2. That is your job. Those are the guys driving your strategic vision and the vision and the strategies. Now you give that executive, then you say you recruit these others. But they must declare vacant positions to you. There is instruments, HR instruments, policies you have, including remuneration and grading structure and everything, which says the kind of a person they should recruit. So they will not just recruit anybody. So and then at the end of the day, the audit committee or other relevant committee will get a report. We recruited a manager for this branch. And this is the person who met our criteria, because who approved those job profiles? It is yourselves. So board does not lose anything by delegating, but you don't delegate in a blank check. The CEO works within the approved policies, and the audit committee at the end of the day should be able to say, we recruited these 3 managers, and this was within the policy. Then the question is, are they performing? Are they delivering? Because if the CEO then does not deliver, and he complains about staff, Mr. CEO, you recruited these people. So what is the problem? So easily, the whole mechanism works to promote best practices, because once you delegate, then you are holding that person responsible for the performance of the institution. So you don't lose anything. And the question of selection, I think the word perhaps we should look at that is a P4, to make sure that it clarifies what is it, so that you don't get involved in recruiting even the driver, the cleaner. Really, that is an operational level. Let that be delegated through the instruments you define. Chair of the Baraton, I hear you loud and clear, but I think the deposit-taking institutions, the prudential regulation of these Sacco industry is anchored on Vision 2030. The medium-term plan, the second one, we are now going to the third one. So it is anchored there. that part of the government mandate is to create a separate body to regulate Sacco industry. That is how Sacco Societies Act came in, away from the Corporate Societies Act. Now, this is a recognition of the complexity and the need for business-specific regulation we are doing. So you attracted that specific regulation, and that's a policy position from the government. We have now going to the non-deposit taking circles. The conversation today, which other financial cooperatives will be under the prudential, a tighter regulatory framework. So I would disagree with you. We are semi-formal. We are not. Even financial policy, government, financial sector, development plan of the country, where we plan under. Right now, we are participating as an agency and the State Department under the working group under the chairmanship of Treasury on drafting the medium-term plan under Vision 2030, number 4. And we are giving our memorandum there. Some of the issues we are sharing here are feeding into that. So government is very clear. There is no vacuum in terms of policy position of the government. Now, the overriding policy goal about in prudential supervision, if you read that, the policy concept by government, is to actually to enhance, to make sure that the regulatory framework reflects the business you do. And that's why today you are being discussed at the same breath with banks, because there is a parallel, albeit, fit for purpose in terms of the prudential regulatory framework, and governance falls at the center of that. We don't want to copy what is in the banking industry. We want to custom make, given that you are user, owner, financial institutions. That is a major difference. Otherwise, it was microfinance, they went to the central bank. But because you are cooperatives, then you are separately and, so I would disagree with you from a policy stance. That is a position. Now, the issue of qualification of directors, we don't envisage. If you look at the qualification and competencies and mix of skills, we are leaving that to you as an institution to define. Even in the industry, you will always find, you will define based on your needs, even your stage of development. So the authority is not defining anything as far as the qualifications of a director, because you are all diverse. So again, if that is construed in the document, we will look into that to make sure that we are communicating that it is you as a board to actually think about that and define what are the qualifications that are desirable, the mix of skills you require. And I would agree with you, academic and the like mean nothing. You don't have integrity. But integrity, apparently, even CAM 490, it is there. In the bylaws, your bylaws, some of the elements you put there to define who is eligible as a director, integrity is there. That's why you look at all that. It is defined already there. So I think we are going, it is implicit that one of the qualification of eligibility will be defined with those elements. The question is, as an institution, whereas they're in the law, how are you operationalizing them given your context? What information do you have access to? If you are at possibly tea or coffee based, you'll want to say, is this person a farmer, first and foremost? Or we shall be calling him here to come and oversee it. His flies on Nairobi, comes for meeting, he does not know the experience of farmers and the like. That's why we are leaving that to actually context in which you're operating. Yes, there is a question you say, the serious one about fintechs. I don't want to draw the parallels because you as Saccos, you're already using a lot of these fintech products without impoverishing our members. You are doing responsible lending. Luckily, as we speak today, you are aware, a week or so ago, there was a communique from Central Bank about regulating those the fintechs who are in lending. And why are they being regulated by government is because of the question of irresponsible lending. Now they'll be under the purview of Central Bank. They have up to September. So I think government is alive. Government vision is very clear where we are going, but the strategies are left to the agents of the government, like ourselves, and yourselves in the industry to work through. That's really where we are, but the vision 2030 articulates very well where we want to go. I think we will, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Benasio. Joseph, just 1 minute. We are way out of time. Yeah, please.
There is the question of as to whether the guidelines are mandatory or not. The guidelines are based on good corporate practice, and these practices, they will eventually translate into law. For instance, the issue of disclosure of remunerations. For the non-DT, it's already law, so it is mandatory. For you, we are telling you start practicing before it becomes mandatory, so that you are ahead of you are ahead of the law, the legal requirements. Then there is also the issue which was raised on terms of the quality of the document that is shared with you. I think we take note, and we want to encourage you to provide more feedback on the same, so that when we finally release the document, it meets the required standards that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the panelists have done justice to your questions, save for the pending ones, which we still have time to do. So allow me to request you to applaud them as they take back their seats. Apologies, I know we are some minutes away of the time. I know adult class is not easy. We'll try again to catch up with the program and go back to the timing the way we had. I had mentioned to you that the CEOs will not come back in the afternoon. So allow me to say thank you to them for the productive discussions we've had with them. I know we will not meet in this hall again. So from the authorities, we say a big thank you. And for those who will be leaving, we wish you journey masses and still make good use of the feedback. For you, those who have completed, you can leave with the secretariat outside there. Now, we are breaking for lunch, but Yvonne, you could be having some information to give us before we break.
Good afternoon once again. Thank you, Director Wira. The CEOs had the objectives to be met. I hope the